fermented sauerkraut. So we're going to turn raw cabbage into live fermented cabbage, which is really nutritious because it's good for your digestion, it's good for your immune system, and it's very cleansing for your liver. So, and it's also preserved, and that's what Ball Jar has given us a grant to teach you, is how to use their products, which are these mason jars, to actually preserve vegetables, preserve fruits. Now this is a little different than like canning of, say, like fruit preserves, because we're actually going to do live fermentation. We're going to encourage the growth of good bacteria, which we call lactobacillus. Have you guys heard of lactobacillus bacteria? Yeah, like acidophilus is one of them. So that's what this is. This is a probiotic for your digestion. Okay, so let's get started. So all we're going to use for this demo is we're going to use some raw red cabbage. We're going to use miso. Do you guys know what miso is? It's basically a fermented paste that the Japanese, it's one of the Japanese live fermented foods. This is chickpea miso. So why chickpea miso instead of regular soy miso? Miso is usually made with soy, right? But I like chickpea. Yeah, I like chickpea because chickpea miso doesn't have soy. So for people who don't like to eat a lot of soy, it's a great food. And I actually like the taste of it better than soy miso. So we're going to use it in the demo. Okay. So we also have sea salt. We're going to need the salt because that's going to actually suppress the growth of the bad bacteria. Okay, so the thing is whenever you leave something out for a long time, something's going to eat it, right? If you're not going to eat it, something else is going to eat it. And in this case, we want to encourage the growth of good bacteria instead of the kind of bacteria that make you sick. Does that make sense? So usually bad bacteria will grow that will actually make you sick, like botulism. But when we do it with the miso and with the sea salt, it's actually going to make the lactobacillus bacteria grow, good bacteria. Okay? So that's what we're trying to do here. So all we have to do is we're going to either cut this up or we're going to grate it. And in this case, I'm actually going to use the food processor with the grater blade because this is going to make it so much easier to make. Okay? So all I'm going to do is I'm going to cut up our cabbage. We're going to cut it into pieces that will fit into our food processor. Okay, so we're going to take the little center piece out. And then this is actually a pretty good size for our food processor. These are really small cabbages. So we're going to actually use two. Normally I would say use like one medium cabbage, but we're going to use two small. And you just stick it through the food processor like this. So this is doing all the work for us, okay? Because normally you have to pound kraut. You've probably heard of kraut pounding. We're not going to have to pound it because this is doing it for us. This machine right here. Okay? So just process the cabbage. We'll go ahead and do the other one so that we can make a whole quart. I find that this method is more controlled and that it actually has a really high success rate. So when I make it in these ball jars, I have like a 99% success rate. Because again, we're wanting the growth of good bacteria, and if bad bacteria or mold grow in it, you have to throw it out. You can't eat it. Okay? So now we're just going to take this cabbage that I've grated up. We're going to throw it in this bowl that we just did our last batch of cabbage in. Alright. And now we need to get it ready to put into the jars. And this is a pretty easy method. We're going to take our miso and we're going to put some water in it because if you look at the miso paste, it's really thick. Okay? That's not going to mix very well with that. You know, we'll be at it for a while. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little container and I'm going to mix some water in with it. And then I'm going to mix my miso with the water. Now this is the same thing you would do like if you're making miso soup. You would want to pre-mix your miso because it doesn't, if you just plop this in like a bowl of soup, it's not really going to break up very easily. So it's just a matter of making it mix well. So we're going to do a few tablespoons of miso. Okay. Put that aside. Then I'm just going to take this and mix it up, make a thin paste. You could use a blender, you could use a bowl. This is just what I have. And then you're going to pour that over your cabbage. Alright, and depending on how much miso you use, you might still need some sea salt. Because if it's not salty enough, bad bacteria might grow in it, okay? So the salt is actually keeping the good bacteria happy, and the bad bacteria, it prevents them from growing. So I say for this amount of cabbage, probably about a teaspoon of sea salt. Okay? Now we just gotta put our love into it. Alright, so we're gonna use our hands. So wash your hands first, which I've done. And then we're just gonna squeeze the cabbage. And you're gonna start seeing with that salt, it's gonna get the juice coming out of the cabbage. It's gonna get nice and juicy. Alright, so you just squeeze it. Now if you did not use a food processor and you didn't use a grater blade, you're probably going to need to use something a little more powerful to break this down. So you might actually need to use like a blunt object to actually pound it. Okay, I actually have this thing called a kraut pounder, which is great because it's made for pounding kraut. Okay, but this is exactly what we want. See how the juice is coming out? That means it's ready to put into the jar. Alright, so we're ready to jar this. Okay. Now if you have a brand new mason jar, it's sterile, but you want to rinse it first because they often kind of have almost like a little bit of a chemical smell to it, so rinse it out. But if your jar is used, like something from your cabinet, I suggest sterilizing it first. So you definitely want to either put it through your washing machine, or what I'll sometimes do is just spray some hydrogen peroxide in it, let it sit for a minute, and then rinse it with hot water. And that sterilizes it, okay? So this jar right here is a little bit smaller than a quart. So I might actually need to use two. But we'll just see what we have. Okay, so you're gonna stuff it in the jar. Now the key is you want to get rid of all of the air, okay? Because the air promotes the growth of the bad bacteria, okay? So what you're going to do is you're actually going to push it down where all the air comes out. So you really need to push it down hard. And if you have a jar that's not as wide like this one, you can actually use like some kind of spoon or other blunt object to do this. Okay? And then just keep adding your kraut. Pushing it down. And you're going to see the juice coming to the top, which is what we want, because that's going to keep the air out of it, right? Juice means the air can't get in, which is what you want. Okay. Do a little bit more. And then I'm going to actually let some of this pour off because there's just so much juice. You want to leave I usually just leave it right to the neck, because that's going to give it some room to expand. So you need to take a little bit more out. Okay, so you can see I've just basically done it right to the neck, and there's juice at the top, which is what we want. Okay, that's going to make it work well. You can see that there's no air pockets in here. And now the key is you want to clean this all off the outside, because if you don't, when you go to open it, it's going to be kind of rotten around the outside. So you just want to take that part off. Usually I'll use like a towel and wipe that. Alright, and then you can even wipe the inside a little bit with your finger. Just get any of the little bits off. And now it's ready to seal up. Okay. Now there's nothing fancy about this. You literally just put the top on. You don't even have to seal it super tight because you want it to be able to gas out a little bit, because this is going to increase in pressure. As it ferments, it's going to produce carbon dioxide. So you want that to be able to leak out, otherwise the top will bubble up and it could even explode. Okay, so just leave it a little bit loose like that, and then you're going to go ahead and rinse off or clean off your jar. And you can see that this is a completely different color than our final product, right? Why did it change color? Does anybody know? Because it produces acid, which drops the pH. And as it produces acid, have you guys ever just cut cabbage and added like lemon juice to it? Yeah, the red cabbage, when you add lemon juice, it actually turns bright pink. So lemon juice is acidic, right? So what that does is it tells you that this fermentation works because we know that it produces acid, which means we know the lactobacillus, the good bacteria, have grown there versus the bad bacteria that are rotting bacteria. Does that make sense? So what I love about red cabbage is that it has an indicator built in that tells you that it works and that it's good, it's ready to eat, it's finished. So when this looks like this, you're ready to go, you're ready to try it. So what you want to do is you want to let this sit out on the counter. Do not refrigerate it while it's fermenting because it needs the warmth of the air to actually ferment. So what I usually do is I'll just put like a towel over it, kind of give it its privacy. Put it like in a dark corner in your kitchen with a towel over it, and that'll keep the UV light from killing the good bacteria. And then 3 to 5 days, come back, check, see if it looks like this. You'll probably hear it. You'll probably hear it hissing, which means it's working. That's a good thing. And then when you're ready, what I usually do is I recommend you put it in the fridge before you open it. Otherwise, you're probably going to be wearing it. Because when it's warm and it's fermenting, it's expanding, right? And there's gas bubbles. So the juice is going to want to come out when you open it. So I recommend that you refrigerate it first. Or if you don't do that, just do it like over the sink or an apron, and then the juice will come out. And then voila, you open it and you have live fermented kraut. It tastes sour. It's got a lot of flavor. You can add it to soups. You can add it to any savory dish. I like it with eggs in the morning. And it helps you to actually digest your food when you eat it with food. So you guys are welcome to come try it. Just take a bite if you want. We also have one that we made with fennel. So if you want to try the fennel version of it.
So two carnitas and one asada?
That's really great.
Oh, chorizo.
Thanks, Barbie.
I would totally put that on the salad.
Chorizo asada.
Okay. That concludes our demo of live fermented sauerkraut. Again, I just want to say thank you to Jar because the mason jar is really the best method for making live fermented krauts because it just works better and it's easier, and who doesn't like having these around? They're great. And so I'm Skya of spoonfulofparadise.com. Thanks for coming.